Well, welcome to the tutorial on PowerPoint. And what we're going to be talking about here is not so much PowerPoint features, more of PowerPoint fundamentals, what we want to see in a basic PowerPoint slide. And we're just going to go through some of the good, the bad, and the ugly. And know that it's a kind of an evolution. As you work with PowerPoint, you're going to look at your slides, and over time you're going to see, boy, these were some terrible slides that I did. And then 6 months later, you might, see that, gosh, I really am getting better at this. And know that even myself, I'm constantly trying to improve the look and the feel of my PowerPoint slides. So let's go over some kind of basic PowerPoint slide construction. If you have questions about technical features about PowerPoint, how do I make it do certain things? A great resource is YouTube. Simply Googling and then looking for videos on YouTube. There are literally hundreds of videos out there that explore some of the features on PowerPoint. The good news is, though, for most of us, unless you really want to get into fancy animations and transitions, the basics are just fine. And when you look at slide design, that's really all you need are the basics. Okay, so let's look at some slides today. We have this slide. This is somewhat of a classic slide. I found this one off the internet, so I'm not incriminating any students or myself, though I will show you some of mine. This slide is horrendous. If you look at it, it's got a lot of things going wrong on many different levels. One is it's just crammed with information. It is. I've lost count on how many bullet points are in here. So there's just way too much information on this slide. It is boring. It doesn't stimulate the viewer's interest at all. If anything, what it does is it encourages your audience to read ahead rather than listen to you, if they're even interested at this point in your presentation. So a slide like this, absolutely a complete waste of time, I think. If you do ever have a presentation where you think it is important that your audience have very specific, detailed information, give them a handout. That's perfectly acceptable. You can give them a handout, and that way, you can let them know during the presentation. You can focus on me. Don't worry, you have a handout, so you can refer back to these maybe detailed or technical issues if you have that kind of presentation and you feel it's necessary to put something in their hands. So this slide, wrong on a lot of different levels. Let's look at another slide. This one, actually this slide is better than our previous one. There are some good fundamentals that we're moving towards. One is it's simple. It's got 3 bullet points. Each one of those bullet points is a very narrow focus, but it is a little boring. Now, the question comes up, how many bullet points should I have? That previous slide, I think, had over 15. I guess if you look at a good rule of thumb, 3 to 6 would be good. I would really focus on trying to keep it to 3. If you need to do more than 3 bullet points, simply have a new slide, because it's too much focus on one particular slide to have that many bullet points. So try to stick to 3 or 4-ish in that range. And if you find yourself really needing more, develop a new slide. What should you say in each bullet point? It should be very condensed information. So this person did a pretty good job. They condensed it up. So it's kind of a quick message point for your viewers. But let's try to improve it a little bit. So I gave myself a few minutes and I said, all right, I'm going to try to improve this lung cancer slide that I, again, found off the internet, not to incriminate any students. And I gave myself about 5 minutes to improve it. So this is what I came away with. I put it on a simple black background with a nice clean font. Threw an interesting graphic that I found, again, on the internet in there to sort of spice it up. And I even took the bullet points and condensed them down even further. I think I cut off a few words on each one of those points. So again, very simple, kind of impactful. Now, when you are presenting, what you want, again, you want the audience to focus on you. And you simply do not want to be someone who's reading a PowerPoint slide. And that's what all this is about. When you simplify the message, you're not going to say 1 in 5 new cancer cases. You're going to expand upon that. That might be the takeaway message, but then you'll give details about, new cancer cases. Maybe you talk about, throughout the years. You're definitely expected to expand upon whatever those takeaway points. Again, this is just a sample, picking lung cancer at random. But you are expected to expand on these bullet points. But think of the bullet points again as your brief, impactful kind of takeaway message that you want your audience to have. And having a nice, interesting graphic on there, nothing too distracting, but something that's kind of eye-catching, I think that helps. And you could even go with a PowerPoint slide like this. Absolutely no bullet points. There's even a school of thought out there right now that are doing PowerPoint presentations with no bullet points. Again, you want the audience to focus on you. Maybe you have, again, an interesting graphic. You could still talk about that content hasn't changed. You're still delivering the same information. It's just the graphic that's kind of in the background is a little bit different. So, and again, no bullet points at all. You could, if for certain points in a presentation, you could do one without even no bullet points. It's kind of an interesting trend that's going on right now. All right, now I promised you at the very beginning to show you one of my early slides. Yes, horrible, isn't it? Extremely way too busy. Yeah, here's a little bit of background on this. So I'll give myself a little bit of a break on it. But in presenting, we had to give the entire curriculum of a program that I developed. And this was everything in the program. Horrible slide. No one could ever read this. It's way too much information. Well, as time went by and I kind of learned a little bit about PowerPoint, by no reasonable ability am I an expert, but I am trying to improve and sharing some of these things that I've learned with you. I was able to basically simplify this slide into this. So it was more of a impact, basically said what the other slide wanted to say is, we have a broad plan of study that's divided into 3 different areas. And I could talk about each one of those 3 different areas as I'm giving my speech, my presentation. Same information being conveyed, but I think the takeaway message for the audience was simpler. They could see 3 pictures, 3 different things people are doing. One is a CT technologist, the other one is a manager, and the other one's what we call a PACS professional, or basically a computer information professional for medical imaging. So we got those 3 pieces, those 3 takeaway points. So I kind of simplified it there. And a little bit about fonts. I know we've seen a few different fonts throughout so far in these slides that we've looked at. The recommendation is keep your fonts relatively simple. Keep them big. You want, if at all possible, let me go back up to that previous slide. These fonts are incredibly small. There's no way that anyone who's sitting in the back of a lecture hall is going to be able to see these. Or if you're presenting it online and that image is squeezed down into a Move Note or a YouTube video, these would be very impossible or nearly illegible to read. Again, a general recommendation is try to keep things at about 30 points. In that range, you should be pretty safe on legibility. And keep it as a relatively simple font. A Arial font is good. What's called a sans serif font, one of those fonts that doesn't have those little pointy edges on it like Times Roman does, which can, on computer screens especially, can make it more difficult and eye straining to read. So a nice clean font is recommended. Now you can, again, rule of thumb, at the very slide that we had at the beginning, the good, bad, and the ugly, I actually used kind of an old Western font in the beginning. I don't know if you guys caught that or not. A little bit more decorative, but normally I stay away from any kind of decorative fonts. And you want to have a nice, a decent contrast, not anything straining, but a good contrast. Here's another slide that I developed. I had a little bit more text in here that I needed, but I wanted to hit home with some specific schools about Mercy College and how we are like in many ways with our regional accreditation, like with Ohio State, Harvard, University of Michigan. And, had a nice graphic under it, and then used a text box with a slight gray background to it to make the yellow letters pop a little bit. So again, kind of aesthetics here. Again, you can get graphic artists in here who will, make things look absolutely spectacular. But again, having maybe an interesting image in the background can help on some slides. Now, as we were going through, well, let me show you my next slide. This will kind of be a summation. But in this particular slide, though, does show, again, using a whole graphic as the background. In general, I'll say this is sort of the typical slide. In general, though, your background should be a uniform or maybe what they call a gradient background. Again, something easy to see, even though you're putting some text on there, even though limited text. Putting text on a picture can be very disorienting and hard to see. I was lucky in this case with the book on the computer keyboard. I had a pretty much uniform green background that I was able to stick text on. But if it was all different kinds of objects in that, the text could get lost with the image. So be careful there. But let's look at this particular slide. Maybe not one of my best, but it's a generic kind of good, I guess, standard slide. In this case, I used a gradient background, just a dark one that kind of would show up well on a computer screen, and then used a sort of a simple, not overly ornate font, and I used 3 bullet points with a graphic off on the side that related to what I was talking about. My bullet points are a little bit long on the words, but I had to put that was the name of these devices, and I had to actually spell out each of the name of the devices at least once in the presentation. When I refer back to it, like let's say on the last one, on the peripherally inserted central catheter, PIC is what we call it, then I can just call it a PIC line from that point on in the presentation, but I had to at least fully spell it out here. So in some cases, they are a little bit long, but still I'm under, 6 words per bullet point, which again, I try to keep everything under, right around 3, 4, 5 in that range, maybe 6, no longer than for each bullet point. If you can get it down to 3 words on that bullet point, go for it, because that's, just distill it down to that absolute necessary. And then a title, on top of the slide. So that kind of gives you basic slide design. Feel free to be a little creative with it. I think anything that you can inject in your PowerPoint slide design to make it more interesting doesn't hurt. The last thing that you want to present your viewers with is something like this. So at least if you learn anything, stay away from these incredibly dense information slides. Go to something, again, very simple, clean, with maybe an interesting graphic embedded somewhere in that image. So again, hopefully this has helped you with PowerPoint slide design, giving you some ideas to think about. Again, for technical issues about PowerPoint, please search the web. There are great resources on YouTube that can help you if you have basic technical questions about how I put an image in a PowerPoint, how do I do a text box in a PowerPoint. There's tons of those out there. So hopefully this has been helpful. And as always, thank you for watching.